One of the things that I like to argue about with my players is third-party and homebrewed content for our games. The difference between the two is that third-party content is published by a licensed company for a specific game, like, say, Pathfinder or 5th edition. Homebrewed content is unlicensed and made by players, GMs, or just fans of the game for use with their own. So there are a few things to watch out for when including third-party and homebrewed content. The first of which, probably the least important, is whether or not this ties into your setting well. And for that matter, whether it fits the tone of the game. For instance, the Gunslinger class for 5th edition was homebrewed, and it doesn't necessarily fit every setting. An example of tone might be just an overtly silly homebrewed thing, like, say, a race of bird people that can only communicate through mimicry of sounds rather than actual voice in a courtly intrigue game that requires a lot of actual speaking. The second thing that you'd like to watch out for, which is probably a lot more important, is the wording on these published materials and homebrewed content. So in main publications for games, they have a team of people looking at it and making sure that everything is all right. If you're not careful about how something is worded, the players can easily abuse this. And of course it's on you if they do, but the point stands. For instance, in Pathfinder, the Shifter class was recently released, and it has an ability that increases its armor class. They specifically wrote into the entry that it does not stack with the Monk's ability to increase his armor class. So that's just something you need to watch out for. The third point in general is that you need to make sure that it's decently enough balanced that it fits with the rest of your party, the rest of your game. So you might need to make sure, for instance, that what you're allowing into your game as far as homebrewed content goes isn't significantly more powerful than what everyone else is doing. That's not to say that one player can't be more powerful than the others. That's part of the fun of the RPG, and it happens all the time. The problem comes from, say, everyone playing the standard races of fantasy, and someone comes in with something they found online, and for whatever reason you let it slide, and it has the power to call down meteors from the sky and rain death upon your enemies. It just doesn't work. It doesn't fit the overall feel, and it certainly doesn't do anything for making anyone else like you. The final point that I'd like to make applies to these homebrewed content and published materials, and that being, make sure that you, as the GM, reads through it very carefully before incorporating it into your game. You might be surprised by how often you misread things the first time through. Or maybe you only skimmed it and you skipped an important piece of wording that affects how it works. Like I said, it's very important to do this in regular materials as well. As the GM, it's your responsibility to know the rules of the game, at the very least, the rules relevant to your party, well enough that you don't need to constantly call into question how something works. And with that, happy gaming.